Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I was lucky enough to chat with writer, producer, and showrunner Matthew Federman. You know his shows Limitless, Human Target, or Jericho, but this week we chat about his newest creation, Blood and Treasure, which finished Season 1 on CBS this last summer, and is already renewed for Season 2. It's a giant globetrotting treasure hunt that you can go binge watch right now. If you haven't seen it, be warned. This interview gets pretty spoilery, and the show is pretty twisty. I loved Season 1. It involved a lot of my favorite TV writers, and I was excited to get to talk to Matthew after chatting with his partner Steven Skaya about the show earlier this year. You can go check that interview out right now. Make sure you finish watching the show, then come listen to this. Or charge ahead, spoilers abound.
Hello.
Hey, Matt.
How's it going?
Going great. Thank you so much for taking out the time again to talk to me. I think the last time we spoke, I was 2 episodes into Blood and Treasure, and have now since gotten to finish it out and then re-binge the back half of it, where the twists get real and the money's doubled. You guys have since gotten a Season 2. Can you give me a little bit of backstory about working with Steven? I know this project went through several iterations of wanting to do it over quite a while, and became this streamlined, swashbuckling, crazy summer blast that I just went through. Can you walk me a bit through kind of genesis to getting it on screen?
Yeah. So we sold it as a fall pilot originally in 2016, and it went through that process. They decided it's not right for them for fall because their fall shows kind of mean a certain thing, but they said, we do these summer shows and they're very different, and maybe we can redo it redevelop it as a summer show. So we never really thought it would go forward. We thought they were just kind of kicking the no down the road. But it turned out we redeveloped it for summer, and we much preferred that version of the show because it meant we can do we were doing the fall show was all the same characters, and the overarching mythology was the same, but it was spread over like 22 episodes, and it meant we could just not do all the dancing in between those episodes and just do the arc over the 13 episodes, and that was much more exciting to us. And it also meant, in the reality of it, to try to make the show the way we wanted to make it by traveling abroad and going around the world. That would have been kind of impossible for 22, but much more possible for 13. So we redeveloped it, and they eventually gave us the green light to go straight to series. And first season we had a lot of time to write because it would make the show cheaper to kind of have it all in the can as much, or have most of the scripts written by the time we started shooting. We were based up in Montreal. We started shooting there, and then we went to Italy and then Morocco and shot, all around both of those countries. And then this season we have less time, but we know our show much better. And so we're already into the flow of it. We have the first 2 scripts written. We have story areas up through 205 or 6. So we've hit the ground running, and we're gonna be going to a different part of the world for Season 2. So it's a lot of new stuff to learn, but also that's exciting, and that's what we want the show to feel like. Is every year it goes somewhere different and feels very different. So yeah, that's where we're at now.
Yeah, that's something that Steven had mentioned as well. The kind of same players, new treasure each season, and I mean, I think everybody should realize we're about to get spoilery with this for Season 1. It's all on Amazon, and everybody should have had a fun weekend binging through that by now, I would think. When it started getting into the real twist at the end, and particularly how you wrapped it with the nice kind of luxuriating, showing each pair of folks and really beautifully visually paring it down to just Danny and Lexi for the last little moment. We kind of broke off to, here's the 4 of, here's Shaw and everybody. Well, here's just Father Chuck and everybody. Well, here's just Danny and Lexi. I realized how much I had really come to enjoy their character interactions even more. The banter was there in episode 1. You guys had obviously had this written for a while, it seemed like. But they really did deepen the interplay was there. I think part of it was me learning the language as an audience member for how the show would work, how the maps would work, how jumping around would work. Can you talk a bit about breaking that across a season so that you dole out these really fun moments each episode? Each episode seemed to end with a new zig or a zag and a beautiful image, and it all seemed spaced out really well. It wasn't just that you got to tell the treasure hunt story maybe you'd wanted to tell since writing stuff in junior high. You broke it out beautifully so that it got to do a lot of deeper things and nod to other things, Shaw's constant predator handshake and things like that. Can you talk a bit about not just, hey, I want to write a treasure hunt, but sitting down to make it a 13 episode blast like this?
I think as we've mentioned before, this was the 5th attempt at making a treasure hunter show for us. We had sold 4 other pilots. So part of it was that we had both never fully written a treasure hunter show and also had lived in 4 different ones in our minds. And so we understood the conventions of the genre, I think, very deeply and come to our own understanding of why treasure hunter things, like the genre is a thing that, if you said to most people, do you love this genre? They're like, oh yes, they're very excited about it. And then when you say, okay, what do you love in that genre? They mention like 3 or 4 things and that's it. There's been a lot more attempts at making things work that haven't worked than there are things that actually do work. And so for us, we've spent so much time looking at what did work and what didn't and why, that we wanted to both take the things that work and leave the things that don't, but also try to do something new. And for us, the thing that felt new was trying to do a character-based treasure hunter show. Because normally the characters kind of, there's a rogue and there's a this and there's a that, but you don't get very deep into it. You don't understand what anyone's family situation is until the 3rd, Indiana Jones movie. But it's generally not what treasure hunting is interested in. And for us, this was a way to tell a story about a relationship kind of through a lens of a treasure hunter show. And that was always the way we thought about it. Was this is a show about Danny and Lexi, and what makes it fun and interesting is they're on this adventure together, but every episode we needed to not only find out next step of the puzzle, so to speak, moving the show forward, but also we needed to kind of dig in the ground of their own relationship a little bit and uncover something new there and feel like that was always progressing apace with the rest of the story. So the show kind of had 3 legs to it. There was the treasure hunt itself, which is 1 line. There's the mythology story, which is another line. There's the character story, which is the 3rd line. And the trick was always making it so none of those things, the show didn't become about any one of those things, but it was about all 3 of those things as one thing. And at first, I think the mythology story probably feels very distinct from the character story, but as you get to the end of the season, you realize, oh, this has actually been one story the entire time. And the end of the season, really, I think the back half of the season, you start to feel a convergence, and I think it kicks up to a different level because the audience is like, oh, I'm starting to see actually what the show is. Before that, it's it's fun and it's, everyone's good looking and there's explosions. And then somewhere, around mid-season, you start to kind of get a sense of there's something more going on here. And for us, the trick was, keeping that all in balance so the relationship stuff didn't overwhelm the thing. It didn't become emo and suddenly you weren't having fun anymore. But that's why you have a room of 10 smart people that you make a show with. And then our executives were really in on the show from day one. And they were a really good outside eye on what we were doing. So sometimes if we started drifting too far in one direction, or, the thing that's important to them is really every episode is an episode. It's not so purely serialized that you can't kind of check in on an episode and kind of understand on a basic level what the show is about.
Yeah.
And I think that actually helps the show because it makes it, I think that feeling that some serialized shows get in the mid-season of this kind of drag where it's setting up stuff for the future, but nothing is fully happening right now. I think if you make every episode have to be its own thing, I think you can avoid that drag a little bit. So really, at every level, from the writers to the execs and the actors who also, get the show on a whole other level and are just in on it and so excited to be there. Everybody wanted to make the same show, and that just makes it so much easier to make a show that has all the different levels that we wanted the show to have.
Yeah, I really found myself by the end of the season wanting to see a spinoff episode, that the kind of thing that gets to happen on a 5th or a 6th season of a show, later on in Person of Interest, where we finally got to see, 2 background characters have an episode or that kind of thing. I would love to see, I would have said Father Chuck and Anna, but that won't work now. Seriously, I had that moment, and then that happened in the show, and I within 5 minutes of me thinking, I would really love to see a father. Oh God, she's gonna die. Shit. About that time, I think Reese handed her the wine glass, and I was like, "Dang it, don't drink that."
Yeah.
Because when you put it together, but there were 3 episodes at the end there where yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say with the Castillo death, like there was a point in the room where we knew there needed to be something to kick over. It's one thing to know somebody's bad in the past; it's another thing to have them be bad in the present. Mm-hmm. And it's a tough decision, but it's like for the impact it had on everyone is exactly why you have to make it, because then they understand the impact it's having on Danny. Like, it has to feel visceral like that. And the idea that the thing that started the show was Dr. Castillo's been taken, and it launched everything, and then to kill her by the hand of the person who said you have to go save this person. Yeah. It felt like the strongest statement you could say of this person is a truly bad person who must be stopped. So it's, on one hand, it's like you don't want to bum people out, and Alicia Coppola is great, and it's like we certainly would love to kind of keep that character around, but it's also these characters are all born in a sense to serve the story, and that's what the story needed. So
yeah, I felt and part of this was the getting this scene, and part of it was the performance of John Larroquette. It really helped sell me on exactly the type of villain he was. He's not Simon Hardwick. He's not the quote unquote main villain at the end, but it gives his character a moment to rationalize it to himself. And you can hear the little bit of disgust when he says, hopefully you're the last person to have to die in the name of Kareem Farouk. And you can hear it. He's selling it to himself a little bit that, I didn't really do this. I was Kareem, forced my hand here.
Exactly.
And I needed that a little bit to bookend with Danny's scene later of being on the verge of making a moral choice that even Lexi goes, whoa. And bookending those two things, it let me establish both their characters more, which I thought was wonderful. The casting, particularly across the show, I got to see both, performances from John Larroquette, who I just grew up with on Night Court, to seeing Anna Silk turn up as Rourke. As the show went on, it got to be a who's who of people I really loved. Can you talk a bit about writing these characters and then, getting the casting of these folks and really seeing them come to life? I feel like Matt Barr is an actor I've seen for years and have just been waiting for someone to write him Danny McNamara. He's just been an actor begging for this role in almost everything, I feel like, where, man, you should not be boyfriend D on the list of Hellcats or something. You should be swashbuckling out there. Same with Shaw.
Yeah, if there was anybody, both Matt and Sophia were so kind of born for, I don't want to say born for their roles, because that sounds obnoxious to say that they're only there to serve our show, but they were born to play roles exactly like the ones that we wrote for them, and both of them I know Sophia said that when she was sent the script by all of her friends, they were like, "This is you. You need to go do this." And even the weird fact that she does this perfect British accent, that it's like, and she's born in Morocco but raised in Orange County. There's no reason that she should be able to do a perfect British accent, except she's just great with accents, and she picks them up. And apparently had friends who were British, and she loved doing their accent when she was young. And just it's like, so in a weird way, they were both kind of in training to have the exact skill set we needed. Yeah. Matt's one of those guys. Danny was really. We thought Lexi would be impossible to find, but we got very lucky to find Sophia fairly early on in the process, and we were like, okay, well, she is locked in. That's great. Okay, now we just need to find the person, who works with her. And it was really tough to find that Danny, because we're trying to do something very different with a male lead role in a kind of subtle way. It's there's ways that we tend to portray masculinity on TV, and lots of times that means not just square jaw and all that kind of stuff, because Matt has all the physical attributes, but it's a sense of kind of like, this person is the hero because he gets in the face of somebody else, and that's how he solves problems, generally with his fists, generally not with his mind. And we really wanted Danny to be very different than that. Not a character that can punch someone but has made a choice, I don't want to be that person. And hopefully the season kind of explains why that is. And there are people who have reacted against. The whole show is about legacy and about how your past informs your future. Because it's about treasure, and treasure is all about how the value of a thing comes from its story and its past and its history. And so we wanted all the characters to have that same sense about them. And so it was very tough to find somebody who could have Matt's sense of, he's fun, and he can do all the history dialogue was really tough for a lot of people, but he's able to pull it off beautifully, and he understands like the Spielbergian moments of wonder where he's like pulling a thing together, and he also, when he fights, you're like, that guy can fight, and when he plays baseball, that guy can play baseball, and so he could do all the parts that the role needed, and it was very tough to find that balance in somebody who either felt like they weren't trying to overwhelm Lexi, or they weren't going to be blown off the screen by Lexi.
Yeah.
Because not only the character Lexi, but also Sophia, she was blowing people off the screen in testing. It was just like, this is a show about Lexi and a person who happens to be standing next to her, and we needed somebody who had the kind of the quiet strength that he could be standing there with her and say, no, we're not going to do it that way, and you could totally believe that she wouldn't just knock him over and do it anyway.
Yeah. I think that balance of strength is part of what made their will they, won't they, and their relationship on screen work so well, and it's what allowed all the other characters to be constantly ribbing them of, have y'all gotten back together yet? No, we haven't got back. Have y'all broken back up yet? No, we haven't broken.
Well, we all know those people who everyone around them is like, you guys are going to be getting together, whether or not you know that or accept it or not.
What stage are we at?
To those people, exactly. But the fun of it was being able to kind of have we know that the audience already kind of understands the conventions of TV. And we figured this is the kind of show that's a savvier viewer is probably going to be into, someone who's into this kind of thing. And let's not pretend that they've never seen this before. Let's just go right at it and have all the characters being like, so you two are getting together, right? And then, make it not about really in the end, will they or won't they, but kind of why they, both why are they drawn to each other? Why are they, what is keeping them from being together? And make the season about that. It's not just a dance where they're keeping each other apart for no good reason. There's like real deep psychological issues and histories that they both have individually and together that are at play. And in the middle of the season, like, their whole relationship blows up for, I think, real and organic reasons of trust and, that kind of stuff. And they both kind of start to see their own blind spots that they have to themselves and their own history, because there's things they didn't know about themselves. And it's not a coincidence that once all that stuff comes on the table and they understand themselves as individuals, only then can they really be a couple. And so we're trying to play like a real relationship story with real relationship dynamics, but, you know, with the coding of this big fun action adventure, you know, treasure hunt. So it's like, if you're not into the relationship stuff that much, you still get all the explosions or anything. But if you're into seeing the relationship, there's some people I see who are like, I've never been interested in treasure hunter stuff, but I really like this relationship, and so I'm watching the show. And then there's people who want all of it, and they're like, holy crap, I can't believe this show seems like it was made just for me.
Yeah, that was kind of where I was on it. Was like, this is giant, you know, Indian short round running from everybody. Like, this is just huge, crazy action adventure, but it also ends in the, you know, camera up on beautiful music and them holding hands and kissing. You know, it just this wonderful beat that I feel like has to be there. It does what what Indiana Jones is really trying, what Lucas is always trying to do, of remind me of a 50s serial a little bit in a way that doesn't consciously bring up hokiness to me or anything, but just gets that nostalgia going. And that's what this swashbuckling just keeps being the word that jumps to mind on this, because it feels like an Errol Flynn or something to me a lot of times. For you in the writer's room, there, I mean, I know for me, from the poison poker chips to, you know, on, there's just been crazy stuff throughout this entire deal. Have you had a favorite moment that you just couldn't wait to see on screen or to see how people took?
I just have to say, because first of all, I'm very bad with like favorite type things. I just kind of like.
Or was there one was there one you heard from someone else in the writers' room that you didn't think up, where you went, oh, that's cool?
Oh yeah, my favorite moment. You know, when because I'm in the room a lot of the time, but then sometimes you know, I've got to be writing or doing other things, and my favorite moment would be someone would appear in the doorway, one of the writers, and they would be hopping from foot to foot with excitement, and they'd be like, "We got a thing for you," and I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'll be in a minute," and I'm like, "Okay, whatever problem I had set them to, they have figured it out," because you can tell by their excitement that they figured it out. And then I come in, I was never disappointed by that. I think for me, what was really interesting was watching, like we talked a lot about the chess game that we're playing with the audience, that the audience doesn't know we're playing yet, because they don't know how the show works. And I was really curious about what the audience would be figuring out where, because these days the audience is so savvy, it's impossible to really hide everything from them. You can kind of misdirect for a period of time, and you can, you know, but there's places where, you know, for instance, in episode 8, when there's the painting that they're going to get back, and I just had a sense of like, people are going to figure out that this is Reese, because it's art, it's Boston, it's like it goes into Danny's past. I was just kind of like, all you need is for one person to figure it out, and I was convinced that somebody would, but also because I'm convinced about stuff like that, I then try to do things and add things to it to kind of knock off that sense of things. So, you know, at the end of it, so the painting became The Death of Cleopatra, specifically because we wanted to link it to the adventure more and make it that it was like, it didn't feel like so much of a sidetrack, because if it felt like a complete sidetrack, it would feel like, well, why are they showing us this, except for the person who's behind this is important to the show, you know, writ large. And I was kind of surprised that I didn't see anybody think of Reese for episode 8. And I was like, okay, we've gotten through like the first kind of big gate. Because like, I think episode 8 is the first time where something is revealed that the audience could kind of guess at. And then when, you know, as the show went forward, it became like, okay, now this episode, they could guess this, and this episode, they could guess this. And, you know, every time we'd pass through a gate and the audience hadn't completely just, oh, well, obviously this is what's happening, I was like, oh, okay, we live to fight another day. Mm-hmm. And really, I was like, you can't guess what the show is really about until the end of episode 12. And by that point, you could do the math and you could figure out there's a variable here that's missing, which is who is actually Kareem Farouk.
Yeah.
And if you understand how TV works, some people are definitely going to guess it's Simon Hardwick. And I did see a couple people on Twitter guess that, and I hated those people but respected them. And I looked at their follower count and I was like, somehow none of these people have big follower counts, and so I don't think anyone's noticing this. So I'm not going to interact with this tweet in any way. And so to me, it was like watching how people were interacting with the show, with like the mythology writ large. That was fun and exciting and stressful, because partially it's like you're checking your own understanding of how the audience mind works.
Yeah.
So that way, the next time we play the game of chess against them, they now know the game they're playing, and now you have to play a different game with them to make up for that. And so, in season 2, I'm sure there's going to be, like, people will be much more now looking for things, and now we have to find ways of throwing off the rhythms of the show so things don't feel like they're happening in the same way.
Yeah, well, while watching season 1, knowing that you already had a season 2, I had in my head that there had to be challenges similar to a band's first album that they wrote over 10 years, and then their second album that they wrote on the road touring that first album, and it's just a different animal, and that you might have had time to write this first season, and then you wouldn't be shopping this around hoping it would be on TV for the second season. It's a different animal. But I hadn't really considered feedback, being able to make changes now. Like you said, understanding a little bit. Well, I know how I think the audience works. I know when I think they'll figure out Bruce Willis is dead, but I don't know for sure. But knowing that a portion of the audience is going to figure it out, it's why most of us sit down to watch TV, is to gnaw at these things, and the same reason we all read mystery novels and stuff is to try to guess ahead. And so to me, it becomes about, and what this show did well was make the figuring out satisfying and fun for me, rather than figuring something out in the first 15 minutes and going, oh God, now I got to grind through 16 episodes of pretending that I don't know.
I mean, so yeah, that's first of all, I think that's the benefit of 13, because it's like, I don't think you could pull off a twist over 22 episodes in this way. I guess you could, but I can't imagine it for a show like this. But our other thing was, we don't want to, if the only value that the show has is a twist, then as far as I'm concerned, you shouldn't make it. It's like, it has to be more than that.
Yeah.
And the thing that we really wanted to make sure was not just that there's a twist, but that on repeated viewings, it would hold up. And also, you'd understand kind of dramatically a slightly different story. So even if people did guess the twist, there's still a dramatic story that's happening. Like, it's still a story about a rejected son and a father, and these two people kind of going to war against each other behind the scenes and pulling the whole world into it.
Yeah.
And hopefully, even if you guess the ending, that's still a story that may have value to you to watch as just its own dramatic story. And so that's one of the tricks is having this, like, the fun kind of mechanistic, like, storytelling that allows for a twist, but then also being a step back from it and being like, okay, but if we were not telling the story with a twist, why would it be dramatically compelling on its own?
Yeah.
If we were telling it from the first moment that you knew this was a story of who Simon was, why would that be compelling on its own? And so it's not a coincidence that there's a couple times where they say to Simon, what do you want? He says, I want legitimacy. Because that's a loaded double meaning word. And I think that, when you rewatch the show and you see him say, I want legitimacy, that actually has a dramatic heft that it didn't have the first time, in a way that it's like, oh, that really is the thing he wanted. He wanted to be legitimate, and he never was. Not just as a person who moves through the world, but just to his father. So I think that for us is the goal, is kind of to have a show that has the look and the feel of something that is big fun and turn your brain off, but actually behind the scenes of it, if you don't turn your brain off, you're going to enjoy the show more, because there's a lot more going on there than it might look like.
Yeah, you had mentioned, worrying that if you showed the backstory about Reese at all, that it would tip the hand of why from an audience standpoint, why am I being shown this unless it adds up later? For me, being able to hide the twist in the space of that family dynamic between Danny and Reese is what allowed you to maybe go a scene or two deeper than I would have than would have stayed in my blind spot if I hadn't understood that it was completely justified to be in the show because it deepened Danny's character, and then to have it be revealed as Reese, it gave me just enough, like you said, the 13 episode step gave me just enough time to spend with Danny going, no, but it obviously is, but just give me a second, that you just upended my life. Like I see it. Just give me a minute. And then to be in that kind of aftermath space, when it hits you in the unveiling that, oh wait, there was another person that ticked off all the same boxes, that revealed Reese. He's been at all the same locations. He's been at all the same connections. Is the only person that's met the person we thought was Korean. And it allowed you kind of by having that family dynamic so well established throughout the entire show, by having the whole show be thematically about that. It kind of lets you hide. Wasn't a twist like pulling the rug out from under me. It was literally a twist of a knife. It took Danny's family dynamic and deepened it when Reese was revealed to be just a rich guy, being a rich guy, and then it grabbed every thread of the show and twisted it when it revealed that literally everything I've seen on screen has been in the service of Simon getting vengeance.
Yeah, and that on both sides of it, that this is a story that started decades ago, and our main characters came into a fight that was already happening, and neither of them were aware of it. But it's interesting that when you talk to the actors at the beginning of the show, and generally you don't tell them anything their character doesn't know. But the people that we told the whole story to were, James Callis and Odette Fair. We told also because we're like, I don't know that you need to know this for your character, but you're not actually shooting Farouk, and then obviously Reese. So it's everyone needed, like, those guys were like, you should know the whole story because you might be able to paint these scenes a little bit, inflect them with a little bit of something, and I think you can definitely see that there, and hopefully on repeat viewings, like I said, like it kind of dramatically holds up that you're seeing the pain or the whatever that someone is having while they're talking about a thing and trying to hide it, and that you might not have picked up the first time.
Do you have anything you can talk about that you're particularly excited looking at season 2? So we've talked about we're going to Southeast Asia. And that's exciting and interesting in a lot of ways. It's I'm both of us love to travel, and kind of being able to pick up and go to a different part of the world and think of new things and look into new cultures and things that drive those cultures, and then figure out, okay, well, what's the story that we can tell that's our show, is an exciting challenge. My writing partner Steve Skaya is right now getting, I think, shots for his trip abroad, because he's going to be going on a scouting trip that's going to go like all over the place, through Southeast Asia. So I think the show is going to be visually very different. We're still going to have some stuff in Italy, because Chuck is going to be there. So I guess that's something I can tell you. I got to say, yay more Chuck. Mark Gagg should be. I would like twice the Chuck next season, please.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, there's things that you think, I like this, but I don't know if anyone else is going to like this, but I like it, so it's worth doing. And then the audience is like, where the hell is Chuck? It was just, I mean, I don't know that people really understand how casting works, that it's like, first of all, every episode you have someone in costs money, and you have however much money you have, and so
you can't just have him there. Yeah,
you can't just have him there all the time, But it's like you make a deal of 7 of 13, and that means he'll be in 7 episodes. You try to figure out how to space that out so you can tell the story. And every episode he was not there. It was like, if I had one complaint about this episode, it was the total lack of Chuck. It's like, guys, I'm sorry, this show isn't called Blood and Treasure and Chuck, you know. But anyway, we've heard the audience and are excited to add more Chuck anyway, because he is. We love the character. We love Mark.
I would also watch a Chuck, Shaw, and Gwen show. I think at this point.
Yes. We try to make it so the like what you would think of as a side character. They're, as far as they're concerned, they're in their own show.
Yeah.
And everyone else is a distraction to that.
Why are these people in my apartment? I have confession to take.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think there's going to be some more fun and like, you know, mix-ups between characters next season. That was part of like I think the joy of writing the second half of the season was we now everyone has established, the audience gets who these people are, and now we can start mixing up the formula.
Yes.
And you know, with episode 12 where Danny and Shaw go off and Gwen and Lexi go off, and it's like that was so much fun to write, to just mix up all the pairings, and suddenly it's just you have new interactions to play with, and so I'm sure there'll be a lot of that in season 2.
Well, I can't thank you enough for taking time to tell me all about it, and I'm really looking forward to next summer when we get to watch it. I assume it's next summer we'll get to watch it again.
Yes, I don't know exactly when next summer, but I'm guessing probably somewhere in the May to June region, and we will be running at a full sprint from now until then to get it made.
Well, I can't wait. Thanks again.
The TV Dudes is an independently run podcast and a member of the Electric Sweater Podcast Network. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes. You can like us on Facebook and Twitter @TVDudes. All the music for our show is by our friend and original TV dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith. To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com and electricsweater.com. I'm Grant Davis. Thanks for listening.